No matter the situation, it's always interesting to see the Ravens play the Steelers, but especially given this situation, it should be a lot of fun. So let's preview how the Ravens could attack the Steelers defense. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video is Lamar Jackson against the Steelers defense. I will post another video probably tomorrow about the other side of the ball, how the Steelers should attack the Ravens defense and give my final predictions there. But I'm going to still give some predictions here. So yeah, let's get into it. Really interesting stuff with these two teams. They've played each other twice this season since it's a divisional matchup. In both relatively recently, week 11 and week 16, they played each other. Let's get into some charts and talk about, maybe what's to expect for Ravens Steelers part 3. First, let's use some PFF grades to kind of get an idea of what these two teams are in terms of each positional category. You see Ravens, a lot of low numbers. The Steelers, mostly low numbers, but the one number that isn't great is coverage. 22nd graded coverage unit going up against the number 2 graded passing unit and number 2 graded receiving unit. So that's not even factoring in Lamar's rushing, although the running game is very good as well. PFF has them ranked first in terms of rushing, and they're 7th in pass blocking. Not quite as good in run blocking, so there's maybe an advantage there for the Steelers. But, the biggest advantage the Steelers have is obviously their pass rush. They get to the quarterback so quickly. That's kind of what they're, what they're made of. That's their game plan essentially, is get to the quarterback enough to disrupt, and it's worked out. It's won them games that maybe people thought they shouldn't have won over the years. One thing that's interesting is if you look at the Ravens' key players in terms of how they perform versus man and versus zone, there really isn't a major difference. Like, there's not really a schematic way you can take the Ravens out of the game, which is interesting because that's not, historically been the case. Usually if you play man coverage, the Ravens struggle. Part of why I think we've seen them, Lamar's had such a great year, and why I think the offense has maybe had its best year in the Lamar era, or I guess I probably should say the most complete year in the Lamar era, because obviously Lamar's first MVP, they were just blowing the brakes off everybody, but they've been a little more complete this year, and it's because they played better against man coverage. Now, one of the biggest X factors is the Zay Flowers situation. As of right now, it has not yet been announced if he's going to play or not. You see, he's at the top of this list, which I just put arbitrarily, but he's the most important player. His yards per route ran against man is 2.37. If you take him out of the equation, do they have enough pieces now in the receiving game to fully take advantage of a Steelers coverage unit that can be beat? That's the question. Also, you look at some, this is Lamar's numbers, one blitzed versus one not blitzed. You see his PFF grade's mostly the same. It's a little bit better when he's not blitzed. And the passer rating does jump up 12 points when he's not blitzed. So he's great either way. It is a pick your poison situation, but you could blitz, and if you do blitz, there is ways to get to the quarterback. The Steelers are right around the middle of the pack in terms of blitz. They blitz on average, right around what your average team blitzes. So I do wonder, especially if Zay Flowers is out, do they start to put more pressure on Lamar, and could it work a little better? And if you're a Ravens fan, you can already picture the scenario of they can't really figure much out without Zay Flowers when they get blitzed, and then the narrative continues of Lamar struggling in the postseason. But of course, really the strategy is get the ball out of Lamar's hands if you're a Steelers fan. That's what you want to see happen. Well, what happened the first two times these two teams played? You look at the box scores, and you see that it wasn't an overly effective. This is the first time when the Steelers won 18-16. You see that the Ravens' offense as a whole did kind of struggle in this game. Only 207 yards on 33 attempts. Isaiah Likely had the bulk of those yards. Zay Flowers wasn't really able to get that involved. Did have a couple catches. One of them was a pass he got into the end zone, but as a whole, it wasn't a overly effective day. So first game passing not so great. However, the second game was much better. He actually had the exact same amount of yards, 207 yards, but on 10 less attempts. He also had 2 more touchdowns, and then they had the interception. That was kind of a miscommunication interception there in that one. But you see the receiving stats, and that's just the number that jumps out at you. Zay Flowers had essentially half of the receiving yards. He had 100 receiving yards of Lamar Jackson's 207. If you take him out of the equation, you have 2 tight ends and a running back being the next 3 receivers. Rashad Bateman had 1 catch. That was it for the other receivers the last time they played. So Zay Flowers' importance to this Ravens team cannot be understated. He's been great this season, and taking him out of the equation would really hurt. So we'll see what happens, but that's a big deal. As for the rushing, this was the first game they played. You see Derrick Henry didn't get a ton of carries, 13 carries, still had a pretty good, 5 yards per carry. Lamar Jackson had 11.5 yards per carry on his 4 carries, so running game was effective there. But the second time, it was just a lot more effective, both in yards per carry and just total yards. They ran the ball a lot more. You see Henry had, 24 carries. Lamar, 9 carries for just 22 yards, but he did have some kneel downs in there that factors in. But, yeah, I mean, Derrick Henry was a monster, and I think that is definitely something that they're going to look towards. And I think we're going to see more rushing from the Ravens this time. Now, it should be mentioned that when you win, you run more. When you're leading, you run more. So, that's part of why they ran more the second time than the first time. But still, I think they're going to try and run the ball more. Let's now get into the film and talk about some of this stuff. So, for example, something like this, you see they're running the ball, but I want to talk about Lamar Jackson's impact in the running game and why the Ravens' rushing attack is just so deadly. You see Lamar's kind of faking as though he could be running the ball. He's not. He's doesn't have the ball right here. But in doing this, it essentially takes away a defender every single play. You can't block everybody, right? But usually, if this is Peyton Manning handing the ball off, that defender for the Steelers can just run over and make a tackle on Derrick Henry. Now, you don't have that, and you can block everybody except for the safety who's deep. As you see, the Ravens still have to make their blocks, but they're able to do so, and then Henry is able to get that 10-plus yard gain. We saw a lot of gains of just right around 10 yards for this exact reason of essentially you can take everybody except for the deep safety out of the play, and then everyone makes their blocks. Henry is able to pick up 10 yards. Now, doesn't mean it's impossible to still win in the running game if you're the Steelers. For example, something like this. So you see, I'm highlighting that Pittsburgh defender right here. Watch what he's going to do. Really quick, you're going to see him essentially just read this play. He's able to get over, and he gets to Derrick Henry, so he has him locked up. This is the way that you can win, right? Just have someone who either reads the play or gets around their block. If you can get a stop here, you can get him in a second down or third down and long, and now they have to throw the football. You get them out of their rhythm, and that's kind of what you want if you're the Steelers. The running game is really going to be a factor. Here's the other issue, though. It's one thing to get in position to tackle Derrick Henry. It's another thing to tackle him. As you see, Henry is able to break off that tackle. He's still going to gain 9 yards on this play, so it ends up being a really good run regardless. So it's so difficult to stop. This is debatably the best rushing attack in the league. It is that level. And so for the Steelers, you're going to have to battle, and you're going to have to not win every time, but win enough. Because the nice thing about playing a team that is run heavy is you don't have to win every time. If you can beat them on first down, well, now maybe they want to throw it, and then you get them out of their rhythm, right? So that's what they're going to need to have to do. Another thing the Steelers are going to have to just do better at is something like this, where they're in a zone blitz right here. The Ravens are going to have multiple receivers run deeper routes to kind of try and clear out that area. And then Isaiah likely will be the guy who's going to be running kind of underneath all of that, and hopefully he can get open. And as you see, the Steelers really, no getting around it, they just don't play this well. They had enough guys, but no one was able to pick up likely. He gets a wide open touchdown. And this is something the Steelers are usually known for being good at. So they really struggled the second time these two teams played with this. They had a few of these types of plays. And if you're going to stand a chance against the Ravens, you have to be able to do this. Now, part of it was, I think they were concerned Lamar was going to be running the ball there, which I understand, but still, you have to make sure you cover everybody. If not, you are going to get burned. Heading over here, though, this is to me, I think, where this game could be won or lost. Because I think the Ravens, they're going to come in and they are going to try and run the ball a lot. I think that's going to be part of their strategy. But what happens when you get a situation like this? As I mentioned, you get a nice stop on first down. It's now 2nd and 8. The Ravens say, okay, well, let's maybe throw the ball here. The Steelers are playing man coverage. This is sometimes where games are won or lost in situations like this. As I mentioned, Zay Flowers is usually their guy. We don't know if he's going to play, at least as of recording this video. I don't know. Sometimes news happens after I record a video. But as of right now, not sure if Flowers is going to play. If he doesn't, who else can win? Well, as I mentioned, it's probably going to be the tight ends and running backs Lamar looks towards. Here, that's Isaiah Likely, who is a really good number. I mean, he's a number 1 tight end, but they have 2 number 1 tight ends, so he's their number 2. As you see, Lamar's going to take the snap. He's going to look in Likely's direction, and Likely makes a great catch. This is what the Steelers need to do, is they need to get the Ravens out of their rhythm and hope that they can make the plays defensively in the secondary. Not exactly, the craziest thing you've ever heard of, but this is what the game is going to come down to. The Ravens going to run on a lot of first downs. If the Steelers can get to third down and manageable, this was the second, but if they can get to third down and, obvious passing situations, then you have to win in a secondary. It can be done, but also the Ravens aren't dead even if they don't have Flowers. One last thing, heading over here. So this is going to be a third down and 11 situation. You see where TJ Watt is on this play. And a lot of people will say in situations like this, well, okay, listen, TJ Watt, obviously, debatably the best in the league. Debatably one of the best to ever do it at the edge rush position. But Lamar is so good at evading pressure. How much does it matter? It actually matters a lot. And here's a good situation. So it's one of those obvious passing situations we're talking about. Third down and 11. You see that Lamar is going to take the snap, doesn't love what he sees right away. And instead of hanging in the pocket, he kind of knows, hey, this isn't going to last forever. I'm going to have to try and make something happen. You see TJ Watt's on the edge. And this is part of the value of Watt. Watch as he's going to just run down Lamar. Lamar tries to make something happen, but it doesn't quite work. Even if it was caught, it wouldn't have been a first down. Watt's value is still important here. Yes, Lamar can get outside the pocket, but having an edge rusher who can chase him down if he's outside the pocket and also just force him out into running outside the pocket a little bit earlier, there's still a ton of value in that. So in conclusion, I do think this game could go with how the Ravens' rushing attack goes. If they're able to run the ball a lot and not have too many obvious passing situations, it probably just isn't going to go well at all for the Ravens or for the Steelers, which is what happened the last time these two teams played each other. The first time they were able to get more of those early stops and they were able to force the Ravens into more passing situations, and just the Ravens in general were throwing more early on. I think the Ravens will not go in with that mindset. So part of this will come down to how many times does Lamar have to convert a third down and 8. Of course, even if Zay Flowers isn't playing, the Ravens still do have a chance to convert third down and 8s. To act like they won't have an opportunity, it would be foolish. They can convert those, and if they can convert those plays, then the Steelers are just screwed. But if you can get some wins there for Pittsburgh, that's where you have a chance. So final predictions time. You see the Ravens' offensive points per drive on the year is 2.88, one of the best in football. The Steelers' defensive points per drive is very good as well, though, 1.88. The first time these two teams played, the Ravens only scored 1.33 points per drive. Worth mentioning, there were multiple turnovers and multiple missed field goals in that stretch. If the Ravens can clean that up, which they did the second time, they ended up with 3 points per drive, and that's not factoring in, they had 7 defensive points as well. Don't factor that into points per drive because you didn't score it on offense, right? But still, very good 3 points per drive. My guess is this game is going to go similar to the second time. I think the Ravens know how to play the Steelers. Losing Zay Flowers could hurt, and this is such a unique situation where I could see a scenario where the Steelers once again have a really good defensive day. There is the game plan, right? Figuring out game plans is something I feel like I can do an okay job at doing during these previews, but figuring out how those game plans are going to go, the reality is, who knows with this stuff. So I'm expecting a pretty good Ravens offensive day. Will that be enough to win? Well, you'll have to stay tuned to my next video when I do the other side of the ball, talk about the Steelers offense, how it will play the Ravens defense. That should be coming out before too long, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Lamar Jackson playing the Steelers, who, I can't believe I didn't bring this up in the video, but notoriously play Lamar tough. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.